keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct, it's on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling impaired. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I root to a tear, switch a scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it. So explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it. No scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool. Hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones. Bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio, once again with your host Nick Burnaby here on UCY.TV. Thank you everyone for tuning in and joining our show, and hope you guys join us every week, every day of the week, Monday through Friday actually. So, we're bringing this show 5 days a week now, and of course we're going to have a special show tonight to celebrate Martin Luther King Day, and I have some 10 quotes that I want to read for everybody. I'm also joined in the studio here today with Jaime Lopez. How's it going, man?
Hey, what's up, man? Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing? Ready for today?
I guess
what's up, Dina?
I think we're also joined on the line by Manny. How's it going, Manny?
Hey, Dina's on the house, brother. Everything good. We had a good protest out there. You know that.
Yeah, we were down today. We participated here in San Diego in the 4 Mile March, which was to commemorate Martin Luther King, and really, I don't know if you guys saw, but the hashtag Reclaim MLK was going viral today, and I think that was pretty big, and it was trending. But it really kind of strikes a contrast to me as far as what is, officially, or what the establishment is doing, and what the grassroots are doing, because there was largely a split showing of support today for Martin Luther King. There was the government's sanctioned official Martin Luther King Day parade, and then there was, the grassroots activist 4 Mile March, and there was definitely a divide, because the march here in San Diego, the parade, the MLK parade, the cops are in the march. The cops lead the march. And we all know that the cops weren't very kind to Dr. Martin Luther King when he was alive. So it just doesn't make any sense to us to have cops leading a march where these guys were attacking this man. And, this is supposed to be a day to commemorate his memory. To us, it was, for many people, it was a slap in the face. Manny, I just wanted to ask you what you thought about the activism today, and keep in mind that these marches, 4 Mile March, took place in I think at 50 different cities, a bunch of places all over the country. What do you think about what went on today?
Yeah, well, it was actually great. Marching to something that had meaning to the Malcolm X library and stuff like that. The only thing that caught me by surprise today, though, is I walked up there and right away I get reprimanded by the cop. He says, "Yeah, I remember you. You went into the super, Well, yeah, dude, we went in there, but the reason we had to make a U-turn to come back out is because the door was locked that day. Well, he said, we can't go into the super again or we'll get arrested. And I was like, it's like, come on, it's just, he didn't have to go there. He really didn't, here, he's trying to kill, what Martin Luther King stood all about and stuff like that. And it just, it really kind of made me a little bit sad because it lets me know that even when you're doing peaceful protesting, there's people that don't like you talking about it anyway, so like that. And it was an overkill on police officers. Even when most of us had left Malcolm X library today, there was still a lot of cops there, man. You would think Manny Aguilar was in the house. Well, actually, he was in the house. But you know what I mean? It's like, dude, are they here for me or are they here for Nick? You know what I mean? The highlight of the day, right? All these cops, and a lot of undercovers. I don't understand too much police presence, to be honest with you. I don't think it was necessary to have all that police presence. I really did enjoy the caravan for us to get escorted and stuff like that. But other than that, I'm just, come on, stuff like that. But I think we made a good difference and stuff like that. And oh my God, when we were going up the hill, I said to myself, wow, that is quite a walk, but that we got our exercises in and it was pretty good.
Yeah, to me, someone made a comment while we were marching today that there was more cops there than there were protesters, and that wasn't necessarily true. But back to what you were saying, there was an overly huge amount of cops at this protest, and these are all peaceful people, and we've never hurt any of the protesters. Have never hurt any cops in San Diego, man. We haven't done any rioting or anything like that. And, there's just a huge amount of cops. And it's out of control, man. This police state is just slapping us in the face at this point, And it kind of makes you stop and think, like, what in the hell is going on? Why are we here with a bunch of peaceful activists and there's hundreds of cops here trying to stop us or scare us into doing whatever they want to let us do? And it's crazy. But we're also joined now on the line with by our longtime co-host DB Schwartz. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good, Nick. The same thing was going on up here. They blocked St. Paul and basically shut it down. Nice.
So it's all over the place, and this wasn't happening last year. There wasn't any counter Martin Luther King support actions last year, but it just goes to show that 2014 was a big year as far as when it comes down to people realizing what the hell's going on with this police state. And I think Martin Luther King really stood up against the police state as well, because all the stuff that he talked about, and all the times that they got attacked by police and all the times that they remained peaceful. He stood very much against the police state and against militarization and against war in general. And, the war on drugs is it's not immune from being against war. If you're against war, you should be against the war on drugs as well. But considering that it's Martin Luther King Day, and we like to, think about Martin Luther King every day and in a lot of things that we do. But considering that today is Martin Luther King Day, we're going to read these 10 quotes that we got. We posted these on the Anti-Media earlier today. So I was going to read these, and if anybody wants to interject or anybody wants to reflect on these quotes, and also we're taking calls tonight as well. So if anybody wants to call in, you can call in at 718-717-8296 if you want to get on the show and talk about, the activism that was going on today, Martin Luther King, any of these quotes that we're about to go into. So feel free to call in. So here we go. We must be concerned not merely about who murdered them, but about the system, the way of life, the philosophy which produced the murderers. Martin Luther King, Eulogy to the Martyred Children, 1963. Here's the next one. The function of education, therefore, is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. But education which stops with efficiency may prove the greatest menace to society. The most dangerous criminal may be the man gifted with reason, but with no morals. So that one to me is pretty big, because I think that's pretty telling as far as what's going on right now with the state of affairs, with the economy, and with this huge problem of wealth disparity, where you got a handful of people that basically own all the resources and all the assets and all the everything, basically. But I think what this quote, when he says the most dangerous criminal may be the man gifted with reason but with no morals, it's just so plain to see that unfortunately, the people that are kind of in control at the wheel of the current state of affairs, they're not dumb. I mean, they're not stupid people. They're very smart, but unfortunately, they don't have any moral compass, and they have this selective morality where they go and they torture people. The U.S. government goes and tortures people. Then when anyone else tortures people, they go drop bombs on them. And it's this selective morality that is a huge problem. And obviously, it's been a problem since 1947 when Martin Luther King first said that. So this was a long time ago.
Yeah, even a couple years after World War II ended, they already saw the behemoth that the military-industrial complex was becoming, especially when it became apparent that now there was nobody to challenge them at all, not even Stalin, because he didn't get his toy until 1949. So you had these 4 years where the U.S. was the dominant superpower and the only country in the world with the A-bomb. So you can imagine what we were doing then, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just this selective hypocrisy, this selective morality, man, that makes us such a threat to the world, because we go around and we do these horrible things. We start revolutions, we do regime change, we blow up Gaddafi, we start a civil war in Syria, we make a coup in Ukraine and stuff like that. And then at the same exact time, we're supporting Israel, who is bombing and killing 2,000 Palestinian civilians. And then at the same time as that, we're also killing the cops in this country are killing a bunch of people in the streets. Martial law-like scenarios going on in places like Ferguson in 2014.
And France right now.
France, Berkeley, I mean, places all over the world. So, I mean, it seems like it's just getting worse. I mean, this quote was from 47, so it's been, almost 60 years, 70 years almost since he said that, and it's still, something that we can still relate to now, and it's just scary that things have been so messed up for so long. But I was, thinking about this the other day, and I was really thinking about, historically speaking, ever since the dawn of civilization, mankind has basically been at a battle between complete tyranny and complete freedom, right? And going back to like the Sumerian civilizations and all that stuff, I mean, and then the Egyptians and the Babylonians, all of them had the same exact underlying issues that we have right now, modern day. It's still this oligarchy type of scenario, and it's just called different things. Back then it was called, feudalism or monarchy, and now they call it different things. They call it capitalist democracies and, all this stuff that they call it nowadays, republics and all this stuff. Even though they have different names and the actors are different, and it's been a couple of thousand years since that, those times, I think we're still facing the same underlying problem, man. And I think, unfortunately, it's one of these problems that humanity it's probably an existential problem that we're going to have as long as our society exists. As long as the human race is alive, then we're always going to be facing this potential threat from these sociopathic oligarchs.
And imagine that 70 million people in the world right now own $33 trillion of assets. That's 1% owning 50% of the entire world's assets. That report just came out today. That threshold's never been crossed, and I mean it's not going to be pretty if we don't, somehow reverse what's going on.
Yeah, man, exactly. And I think Dr. King also felt pretty strongly about wealth inequality and understanding that that we were under a system of exploitation. And I think this next quote here from 1967 it kind of goes into that a little bit. The Western arrogance of feeling that it has everything to teach others and nothing to learn from them, is not just. A true revolution of values will lay hands on the world order and say of war, This way of settling differences is not just. This business of burning human beings with napalm, of filling our nation's homes with orphans and widows, of injecting poisonous drugs of hate into the veins of people normally humane, of sending men home from dark and bloody battlefields physically handicapped and psychologically deranged, cannot be reconciled with wisdom, justice, and love. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. So, I mean, this quote to me is just like completely, like the whole thing is relevant today, you know, and it goes in. It's basically about foreign policy, and this is from a speech called "Why I Am Opposed to the War in Vietnam" from 1967. But you know, it just goes to show that the foreign policy that we're facing right now to this day is bankrupting us. Not only in the budget, not only in the wallet, but morally. You know, we're bombing all these countries and people just really don't really care that much. You know, and it's crazy to think about it, but hundreds of thousands of people are dying in Syria, and the U.S. government is largely at fault because we helped prop up that revolution. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think Assad is a legitimate leader, but at the same time, I don't think we have the U.S.'s place to go in there and overthrow a government just because we think they're bad. I mean, I've seen this meme so many times where they said if the military was really protecting our freedom, they'd be in Washington, D.C. right now. And to me, it's pretty true because considering the fact that these guys have this selective morality, that's what makes it seem like they can get away with it. But the fact is that we have to start holding not only politicians, not only governments, not only corporations, organizations, but individuals to a consistent moral standard, where you say, well, if one country, you know, is bombing people and using depleted uranium, well, then that's bad. It doesn't matter which country is doing it, and that country should be in trouble for doing that. You know, and instead, it's like we get to go over and use a bunch of depleted uranium in Iraq, and no one says a damn thing about it. And then we want to go invade Iran because they may or may not be working on a nuclear program. You know what I mean? So
well, they are, and so what? I mean, they want to be protected. They want to be able to protect themselves from super states, and that's, you know, as long as they have the ability to do so, they're going to do it. And as far as depleted uranium, you know, the argument's always going to be, well, it's armor piercing. It's the only thing we can use. And if we didn't have this, we wouldn't even be able to, you know, fight and have superiority on the battlefield. And there's all kinds of arguments. And the fact is, when are we going to ever see for ourselves a war justify in our eyes what happened? Never, ever, 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 never. There'll never be a reason when war can be justified for any reason. And the more we get into wars, the more we kill people, the more we see we are spiritually dead.
Yeah, man, and you know, Dr. King was definitely on here when he was, you know, he was just saying, going to war to settle disputes is no longer justified, no matter what it is, and that's where we need to get to. And we talk about this all the time, man. This post scarcity society, post-war society where human beings no longer waste resources trying to kill each other. Instead, they waste resources trying to improve the planet, improve the technology, improve our traveling abilities throughout throughout space, and improve all of our sciences and all that stuff. That's what we should be doing. But unfortunately, we spend a lot of time and a lot of resources blowing each other up. You know, and humans have been doing this for a very, very long time. So Dr. King foresaw a future where we finally got past all this war, you know, and I foresee a future that way too. But I just, you know, sooner or later, I mean, I don't know what it's going to take. You know, it's going to take some kind of cultural awakening.
The last war is going to, hopefully, we can only hope that the people that want to do mass murder against each other end up killing each other, and that we're left, that the meek inherit the earth, so to speak. Because how else would we ever get away from this without the sociopath removal of our gene pool? I don't know.
You know, Nick, the quote you were just asking, you know, kind of ties in with the next quote that you were going over your list. If you don't mind me reading it, the hope of a secure and livable world lies within disciplined nonconformists who are dedicated to justice, peace, and brotherhood. The Trailblazers in human, academic, scientific, and religious freedom have always been nonconformists. In any cause that concerns the progress of mankind, put your faith in the nonconformist. We really have to find those guys that are. It's us, we're trying to move forward and get going, and we're doing this. It's going to be a long battle, but I think it's within us to do it.
Everybody's got a little nonconformist in them. It's just about, can we harness it? Obviously, some have more than others.
Yeah.
And
when you come to the realization that the alternative to actually trying to do something is far, far worse, then you're willing to do something, because so what if you get arrested or worse? Then if you allow what they look like they're trying to plan to happen, it's going to be a nightmare for everybody anyway.
Yeah, and that's one big problem I see, because one of the earlier quotes was about education. And that's one of the problems that we see going on in the public education system, which we all know is under a lot of stress. It's underperforming. The U.S. Is falling in education quickly. But a lot of the reasons behind that is because they're not teaching the children how to critically think as much as they should be, and instead they're just teaching them how to memorize and how to follow directions and stuff like that. When those kind of people are definitely needed in society, but like Dr. King was saying in that last quote, you need the nonconformists to step up and become big and be a movement of nonconformists. And it's hard. It's tough for nonconformists to organize well into groups, and that's why you always see activist groups always fighting over and arguing and stuff like that, because there a lot of people are just really passionate and they're nonconformists, so they're not going to conform with the group that they're with either. But that doesn't matter. I mean, I think we could all get past that stuff when the issues are big enough, and we can raise a large enough profile around the issues. And I think we saw that happen in Ferguson and the resulting, all the controversy that went on, and then Eric Garner over late 2014, that was able to happen, and that's what made today a possibility. Because like I was saying, last year there wasn't really a Reclaim MLK Day. It was just happy Martin Luther King Day, everybody, and now there's a movement going on because they're starting to see it. And fortunately, the media, the independent media, is shifting the debate, and then it forces places like if you go over to and look at rawstory.com, they have a police section now where they just talk about bad police stories. So what we're seeing is that the independent media has forced the much of the corporate media to shift their views, or at least shift their coverage. And of course, there's still places like Fox News that seem like they're way out of touch, and they are out of touch to the average, the average millennial. But to these really, really old people that actually watch Fox News, because the median age that watches O'Reilly is 72 years old, to them it's not so out of touch. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. For us, it's like, oh man, this guy is off his rocker. But I think that it's really been 2014 was really a strong year for independent media, man, and it shifted the debate. And it's because of all these nonconformists that were able to unite. And that's the hardest thing for a nonconformist, is to unite.
It is. Everybody has their own creativity. Everybody has their own points that they want to make, and it is. We've dealt with these kind of groups.
So this next quote is amazing, right? And this kind of resonates with me because I recently went to Birmingham because I went out there to visit S.M. Gibson, which is the host of Tuesday and Thursday night's radio show. Same time, same website. You guys can come back tomorrow and listen to them. But they are actually in Birmingham, and his co-host, D. Young, as well. I went out and visited them in Birmingham, and I went to the Civil Rights Institute, which is basically a museum about civil rights, and I got to see a lot of the stuff that went on, because Birmingham, Alabama was more or less where it's like the Ferguson of the police accountability movement. That's what Birmingham was to the civil rights movement, right? And this is where those little girls were bombed in the church. I mean, 4 little girls died because some KKK guy bombed this church. The dogs were sicked on the kids. They were spraying them down with hoses. I went to that park. I walked through the park. They have life-size statues that reenact the what went on there, and I got to go and look at that and see what they had to go through. So here's a quote from Martin Luther King when he was arrested and spending some time in the Birmingham City Jail in 1963. So the question is not whether we will be extremists, but what kind of extremists we will be. Will we be extremists for hate or for love? Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied here. Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice or for the extension of justice? And then that was just excerpted from a letter from the Birmingham jail. But
well, yeah. What if people weren't like just kind of passe about making positive change in the world in mass? Like, there's so many people right now doing evil for a paycheck. Yet, if we could somehow twist that around and flip it around, and swords to plowshares, could you imagine? Could you imagine the technology the militaries of the world probably have? What would happen if we just flipped it around?
Today at the park, what's amazing? Ever since I've been back to the park down there at City Heights, I noticed they always assigned 2 cops to protect that sign, that had the cop's name on it, because after what happened with the Mike Brown thing,
Yeah, they got 2 full-time cops now because one of our friends covered up. They had the protest started at this park in City Heights, which is a neighborhood in San Diego, and the park is a memorial park for this cop. And supposedly he was actually one of the good cops. But the first protest, one of our friends covered it with a sign that made it read out, instead of saying the cop's name, it said Mike Brown Memorial Park. And it caused a huge controversy, which was completely just materialistic and like superficial controversy, right? That went on here in San Diego, and everyone was like choosing sides, like, oh yeah, they disrespected the cop, and like, oh no, it's okay, they could have done that. I mean, it was just one of those divide and conquer things. But now they actually have 2 cops full time protecting that little sign where it says the cop's name, and it's just like, it's crazy how shallow these guys are, and how much it just really shows how phony the whole system is. That's what I got from it. What do you think? Oh, sorry. I don't know if Maddie's still on the line there. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it was just a huge presence of cops, and it was just beyond like, I wouldn't say frightening, but it was just dumb. Like, and the fact that they had 2 cops assigned to this to protect the sign, it was just like, okay, that's just ridiculous. Just a waste of money and a waste of time. But
So is the sign okay?
yeah, the sign is nice and safe.
Oh, good.
Nothing's been, done to the sign since then. So we're gonna move on to the next quote here, and we got a few more to go.
I like this one. May I read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Men often hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they cannot communicate. They cannot communicate because they are separated. This is from his Stride Toward Freedom in 1958. Yeah, but sometimes they make it so hard for us to communicate based on just specific reasons to separate us,
I think, a lot of what that quote represents to me is also like the basis of racism as well.
Yes,
because
man.
most racism comes from people just afraid of each other because they don't know each other and they think that they're so different.
Back then it probably applies to racism, but nowadays you could apply to different segregated groups. There's a lot of people that are segregated for different things, sexual orientation for some. There's other people for beliefs. There's people. There's probably a greater majority who supports weed. But there's probably a lot more that don't either, and so. There's these things created, these walls created within issues to separate people, and we can agree on everything else, but there's that one thing we don't agree on, and it could be like the end of the world for us.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that especially when we talk about like solidarity or like coalitions or people building unity, the thing that we have to get past is that We may be afraid of each other or whatever, um, but you can't let one disagreement break you away from being associated with someone or something.
Exactly.
You know, just because one group may believe in one idea, and you may disagree on that. You know, the problem is that we're never going to have enough unity if everybody says, "Oh, well, that person slightly disagrees with me."
Do you ever
And then
feel
you
like
get
it's like, okay,
movies.
let's throw this one issue up, so let's distract everybody.
Oh, definitely, man. They do that all the time. Like the whole Duck Dynasty thing when they passed the NDAA back in 2013. I mean, and then the Miley Cyrus distraction.
That's true.
I mean,
Well,
dude,
and
there were
then
so many.
they'll use popular media too to kind of smoke screen it, where you'll have the Paris attacks, and then they'll coincide that with a movie like American Sniper. And now watch, we're going to go in now with some force in some country there, like Syria, and people are going to be all for it.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that. This whole American Sniper movie, and now the controversy that it's like stirring up, and apparently apparently there's like a bunch of lies like in this movie, and it's like not even true. And the book that the guy wrote or was wrote about him is has a bunch of fabricated stories in it and stuff like that, and that's fine. I mean, who cares? I mean, freedom of speech. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this post we made on the Anti Media the other night, but um, people that saw the movie were coming out, and it was just plain to see that this was propaganda. You know, it's nationalistic propaganda. You're glorifying the fact that this guy killed, you know, a bunch of people. You know, he sniped like a couple hundred people, but his overall kills were like hundreds and hundreds. Um, and they're really glorifying that. And people were coming out of the theaters like talking about, oh, now I really don't like Muslims and stuff like this, like posting tweets. I mean, it's crazy the propaganda that's going on. And like you were saying, and it coincides with this terror attack in France and this nationalistic rise to power coming up in Western Europe and Northern Europe, anti-immigration, you know, racist ideologies coming to bear fruit in these places, and it's coming home to the U.S. to roost, man. You know, fortunately, like we've said before, it's the old people that are brainwashed by Fox News that are going to be feeling that way. Unfortunately, their grandchildren, the one that are actually have to fight for these ideas, that if they try to, the ones that are actually going to have to fight for these ideas, are going to be, you know, not in this nationalistic, racist mood, because the young people, I think, have shifted away from that stuff.
Well, they could only get 25,000 to show up for these anti-Islam protests in Germany, which shows it's just not really gaining too much traction. And it's not that people don't have differences or whatever, that it's they don't care anymore, man. Like the younger generations, we're just trying to make it. We're not worried about what people's differences are between us anymore. Like the economy's gotten to the point now where people are like, whatever I got to do to make it, you know, it's going to be the best thing for me. And it's just out of pragmatism. Nobody cares anymore. And they just try to push this divide and conquer crap.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll go ahead, man.
I wanted to make a comment. I was kind of really, happy that the coordinator today let me speak about letting these young activists know that when it comes to activists and justice and all that, there's no borders and all that. So I got to talk about the 43 and stuff like that, you know, and Acapulco and, of course, Guerrero and the whole state is still going strong. And I see a revolution happening this year and stuff like that, you know. But, to motivate people and stuff like that, I know the highlight of the day for Nick was seeing Manny, but I'm going to give you another highlight for the day for you, okay? I have a quote that says, "Don't let the fear of what could happen make nothing happen."
Yeah, man. I heard your speech today, dude, and you were talking about, activism around the world and how in places in Mexico, Central America, Guatemala, you can just disappear. Journalists, Mexico is like the most dangerous country for journalists, and they get taken out like all the time. But I remember that one of the points that you made today in your speech is that, eventually, just like Dr. Martin Luther King, we can't let the fear of whatever it is that these guys are willing to do to us scare us from, and stop us from doing what it is that we are doing. And the fight for justice, I think, to me it's a noble fight, and we're definitely, anyone fighting for justice, anyone fighting for rights, is on the right side of the fight. But many times, as we saw with the civil rights movement, you are the subject of violence and oppression and defamation from the media and stuff like that. But that's just one of the things that you got to deal with, and I think people have to just like the point you made in your speech, Manny, is we have to let it go, and we have to accept all that stuff and say, okay, well, if they're going to, blackmail me with the NSA, well, then they're going to blackmail me with the NSA. If they're going to do anything, and the point you really made was that we can't be afraid. We can't be afraid to die or anything else if you're going to truly stand for what's going on. And unfortunately, sometimes in the case of Martin Luther King, you pay the ultimate price. And of course, they can't do it to everybody, and that's the whole thing. Is the movement has to stay decentralized. Everybody has to remain a leader. Otherwise, the movements, the modern movements, the modern liberty and freedom and rights movements could suffer the same fate. And that's what's so great, I think, right now, and thanks probably mainly to the internet and a few other factors, is that they've remained, decentralized for the most part. And that has made it a very effective network. And these protests aren't being shut down. They can't be shut down. Every single city has multiple organizations that put these together, and they just can't be stopped. And that's what I think is awesome about this new civil rights movement, is now we have the technology with the internet that just completely changes the game.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to the next quote here. And this one's from his Nobel lecture, The Quest for Peace and Justice, 1964. Violence is immoral because it thrives on hatred rather than love. It destroys community and makes brotherhood impossible. It leaves society in monologue rather than dialogue. Violence ends by defeating itself. It creates bitterness in the survivors and brutality in the destroyers.
Wow.
This is I can't. This quote basically to me is just predicting everything that's going on with the terrorism and the radical Islam, ISIS, Al Qaeda, and even though all these organizations have shady pasts where the U.S. really helped make Al Qaeda and stuff like that, the CIA has shady, connections with these groups. But in the end, they are able to recruit a bunch of guys that actually believe that they should be doing this. A lot of these terrorist fighters are truly, true believers, and they think they're doing the right thing. But according to this quote, and I completely agree, where he says here, it creates bitterness in the survivors. So if you look at it, how long have we been over there in the Middle East, menacing in their internal affairs? Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, now Syria, Yemen, Pakistan, all these countries that we've been meddling with. Well, guess what? All that meddling creates a lot of bitterness. And that bitterness creates a big market for people that are interested in lashing back out because their parents got killed by a drone strike, or their daughter got blown up by a grenade, or their dad was actually killed in a missile strike that hit the wrong house. Whatever it is, it's true. And then it creates brutality in the destroyers. And then you look at what we mentioned a little bit earlier, the CIA torture report, the brutal torturing that we're doing everywhere around the world.
What did that do to our reputation worldwide? It made us look barbaric, man. It set us up to be hated worldwide. And not only just our government, but if the citizenry now has this information and nothing's being done, no house cleaning's taking place, then it's going to be used to justify someone having a war with us.
Yeah, and there isn't that much of a backlash going on right now when it comes to this torturing. Now, let's not forget there is a big event planned on January 31st, which is a Saturday, I don't know exactly how many events are already planned, but I'm sure there's going to be, I don't know, 50 or more. We're doing one here in San Diego at 1 o'clock at Balboa Park. But, we're trying to raise this issue up a notch, to get some, legitimate coverage of this torture report, because obviously the corporate media doesn't want to cover it, so we're going to have to use social media to get this message out there. But the fact of the matter is, our government has been torturing people badly and doing a lot of unjust things. And I think it's time to put that to an end. We need to raise this issue up higher, and talk about Guantanamo, talk about the CIA and all the things that they're doing, and all these experimentations that they've done, not only on foreign soldiers but on Americans, on all kinds of people in this country. So, I don't know. It's really attempted. They've attempted to sweep it under the rug. And this whole, the whole thing with that movie, The Interview, Seth Rogen, and all that, North Korea, that kind of acted as a cover for the CIA report, because the CIA report comes out and then it's like, oh, now it's this huge thing with North Korea and they hacked Sony and all this crap, and that's what occupied the news cycle. Nobody talked about the CIA report.
And we've had malware in their servers since 2010, apparently, according to this New York Times article, which is just laughable because everybody's saying they can't do it. They don't have the technology unless they're doing it from China. So if that's the case, the implications become, well, another big setup, right?
Yeah, regardless of what exactly happened, it really served the purpose of allowing Obama to use executive orders to make sanctions against North Korea. And of course, Obama is, thought of as the peace president, but, sanctions, in my opinion, and according to many people, sanctions are an act of war. So, committing sanctions against North Korea because you claim that they hacked a private corporation, then that's kind of it's a reach, to say the least. It's a huge reach, and
it invites Putin to do the same thing to Eastern Europe, which are now freezing -30 inside of buildings. That's fatal. I don't know how many thousands of people are going to be freezing to death, but the sanctions go both ways. See, we're not hearing about what our sanctions are doing and the starvation they're leading to. But you can imagine if what Putin's doing with natural gas is killing thousands, then us cutting off food shipments has got to be killing thousands.
It was estimated years ago that our sanctions against Iraq killed 500,000 children. And there's a famous video where Hillary Clinton is actually questioned about that policy. She defends it. She goes, yeah, it was worth it. 500,000 children dead. Yeah, she says it was worth it. And to me, this is why Hillary Clinton presidency is such a joke.
And scary.
God, she might as well be a Republican. She's a neoconservative war hawk. That's all. The only thing she's got going for her is that she's a woman, and that's literally about it. Everything else is neoconservatism with a little splash of neoliberal progressive values. You know what I'm saying? So,
but at what point do the American people understand that everything right now is all blowback, 100% of it? There's nothing new. There's no new threats. Nobody's insane enough to fight us and declare war on us, no matter who they are. So what we're all seeing is just it's blowback for clandestine activities, man. Stuff we're not signing off on.
Yeah, definitely, and it all runs back to that quote that we were talking about. It's the bitterness from the blowback, and the over and over and over we intervene, we overthrow governments, we install governments, we prop up dictatorships in places like Egypt, and then we throw out the dictator, and then we prop up the military junta that comes into power. This is just crazy stuff, dude, and the this guy that was supposed to bring about a time of peace, like a Jimmy Carter type of era, has really turned out to be a warmonger, man. And this whole joke about Hillary Clinton becoming president, and then her running against Jeb Bush. I mean, it's a total slap in the face, man. And if that really comes into fruition, then I'm just like, I lose total faith. I mean, I've lost all faith in the system already.
Then the oligarchy is going to come out, Nick. If we have Bush versus Clinton again, and it becomes so apparent that you have literally family dynasties running things, and we are in a legitimate oligarchy, they'll just come out and they'll try to enforce it some way with, like they've always said, man, some kind of chip or some shit.
Most self-proclaimed liberals that I know would protest a Hillary Clinton presidency, and most self-proclaimed conservatives would also protest a Jeb Bush presidency. So, I mean, here's the thing for me is like, while I would lose all faith in this sham of electoral politics in the U.S., the thing that I would kind of be hopeful about is that maybe people start to realize, if they see a Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush run, people would start to realize, okay, well, something ain't right. This is like ridiculous. What is this, a monarchy? What do we have, kings and queens?
Yeah, oligarchy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that study, we reference it all the time. Multiple colleges now have covered this, but the U.S. policy decisions have become oligarch, style.
And they probably are related to monarchy. Let's be real about it. They probably are related to monarchy.
Oh yeah, they are. They actually are, man. I mean, almost all presidents, except for like 3 of them, are related to monarchy, from Britain, and the Clintons are related to them, and so is Obama. So I mean, yeah, it's kind of crazy. It was actually a little girl that figured out that whole thing. She did like a science fair project, and she figured out that all the presidents except 3 were related to this one king in England that goes back to like I forget what year it was, but it's
King Edward VIII or something like
that.
A
long time ago. But yeah, they're all related to this one king, except for like one guy that was like his last name was like Von Buren. He was like a Northern European, and he wasn't related to that bloodline. But everyone,
I think he was Dutch. Van Dun. I don't know.
Yeah, Van Buren. He was like a Dutch guy. He was the only Dutch president. But yeah, I mean, and it took a little girl to solve that, which is pretty cool. So I think we're gonna move on to the next quote here.
Somehow, this madness must cease. We must stop now. I speak as a child of God and brother to the suffering poor of Vietnam. I speak for those whose land is being laid waste, whose homes are being destroyed, whose culture is being subverted. I speak for the poor in America who are paying the double price of smashed hopes at home and death and corruption in Vietnam. I speak as a citizen of the world, for the world as it stands aghast at the path we have taken. I speak as an American to the leaders of my own nation. The great initiative in the war is ours. The initiative to stop it must be ours. This is from Martin Luther King Jr. At the Trumpet of Conscience, 1967. And this guy is deep. There's a reason he gets a whole day.
Yeah, I mean, he was brilliant, to say the least. And a lot of people try to discredit him and say, oh, he was a communist and he was a socialist and stuff. And you know what? Frankly, I don't give a damn whether he was or not.
He was a socialist, but that's different. He didn't want people to not work. He was like, if you work, you'll get luxury. If you do a good job and do your best, you're going to get everything taken care of. It's like we always talk about selective socialism. It's post scarcity, man. We don't need people to be out on the streets starving.
Yeah, and that's why he became so dangerous, because for a while, they were like, okay, well, this guy, he's just a race, he's out for race rights, and okay, we can do that because what we can do is we can polarize the situation and make all the racists on one side and all the people that are for racial justice on the other, and we can polarize that, and that's what the powers that be thought at first. They were like, okay, well, maybe this guy can be. Maybe we could work him for our benefit and use it to polarize the nation and basically neutralize the population for the next 10, 20 years or whatever. And then when Martin Luther King started to get more dangerous to the establishment is because he started uniting people. And if you look back at all the people that have really gave the government a hard time and all the people that have been taken out, it was the people that were able to unite. And that's why Martin Luther King was so powerful, is that he started, speaking and working in these broader movements, such as the anti-war movement and the wealth disparity issue. And that's when he really started getting dangerous, because then he started speaking for the poor. He started speaking for everybody. And that's when it finally got to the point where they said, okay, that's it. That's enough. And that's why if you guys saw the Anti-Media today, we had an article up. It was on the Facebook page. Actually, we wrote it about a month and a half ago when the documents first came out, but it showed that the FBI was actively trying to get Martin Luther King to kill himself. And then they have basically were saying like, well, if you don't do it, you know what's going to happen. We're going to kill you. So I mean, to me, there's no doubt that the government was behind the death of Martin Luther King, which it doesn't surprise me because he was such a uniting figure. And this quote here that you just read, Jaime, it still to this day is very relevant, and almost all of these are pretty relevant because all you have to do is replace Vietnam with Iraq, and then it's basically the same situation. But he's addressing these leaders to put an end to these wars. But obviously, we've seen, since he's been dead, we've seen that the leaders aren't interested in putting an end to these wars. We've been in a constant state of warfare for a very, very long time.
When was the last time we weren't in war? Do you know?
It was like during Jimmy Carter's presidency, but still at the same time we were still in a basic, Cold War situation still.
Yeah, it was like 73 to 79. We had a gap, and then back into Afghanistan.
Yeah, so it's been just a constant state of affairs with this war, and it goes back to what I was trying to get through earlier. Is that war and injustice? It's not just it wasn't just back in the 60s and then it ended and then now it's here again. It's always been there, and it's been there for thousands and thousands of years. It's part of human nature, man. There's always going to be these people that are going to try to exploit other people. And so that's why we have to work on ideas in the future that are able to neutralize these kind of ideas from taking shape. These ideas of oppression and racism. I mean, we need to come up with a new system that doesn't, make room for all that stuff to happen.
Yeah, that's correct. Actually, the system needs to also stop making up Mickey Mouse laws like hoodies now. It's going to be against a lot of wear hoodies. I mean, the system is running scared that they got to make up for anything that looks controversial and stuff like that. And it's just like that. Also, I want to make a comment about the sanctions. So we declare war when we do sanctions against a country. Look how long we've had sanctions in Cuba. We pick on the smallest country possible. It's just amazing. I just don't understand how anybody can have respect for us around the world, which they don't. I'm picking on an underdog like Cuba. Come on, cut me some slack. So hopefully the president of the United States will speak about that tomorrow. I'm kind of not really a guy that likes to, hear the union address, but I think I might listen to it just for the hell of it. So. And I want to send a shout out there to my friend Didi Schultz out there. Okay, ¿Qué pasa, Didi? ¿Cómo estás?
Bien.
Hey, your
Not
Spanish
bad,
is getting better out there in Minnesota, man.
Hey, I have a lot of practice.
So let's move on. We got to get through all these. We only got a few more left.
It's actually just two more.
Yeah, there's only two more left. So I want to get through all these before we finish up the show here. This is from the Nobel lecture, Quest for Peace and Justice. We had another excerpt from this earlier, from 1964. Man must evolve, for all human conflict, a method which rejects vengeance, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love.
Love.
And it's kind of a
All you
common
need
theme.
is love.
And this is a common theme with Martin Luther King's, teachings and with the things that he spoke about, is that, solving our problems, the way that we're going about them currently is not really working. Bombing people and sanctioning people, hacking people, all this crap that's going on. I mean, this stuff is not working. I mean, if anything, since 9/11 and when they started fixing, quote unquote, fixing our security state, we're nothing but more insecure than we ever were. There's more threats out there, more perceived threats than there's ever been. ISIS and Al Qaeda and all this crap that's been going on. The stuff that these guys are doing just isn't working. And it's for people to let this continue to go on, it's insane. It literally, like by definition, is insane. We can't let the same crap keep happening over and over. So I think definitely this quote really resonates with me, man, and it means that we need to start solving our problems in a different way of thinking, which isn't aggression.
Or else you get Ukraine, where all these people keep getting hit by massive amounts of artillery that are just regular people going about their daily lives, because there's two armies shooting ordnance back and forth. And for what?
For natural gas?
Yeah, but come on, let's just share.
No.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why you saw the price of gas go through the floor, was because we wanted to dry up Russia's funds so that they couldn't go in and defend Ukraine, right? So
didn't work, did it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's still playing out, and it's crazy, but Russia is definitely making some moves. Let's cover this last quote here and then see where we go from there. We must work passionately and unrelentingly for the goal of freedom, but we must be sure that our hands are clean in the struggle. We must never struggle with falsehood, hate, or malice. We must never become bitter.
From Give Us the Ballad in 1957. Damn, man.
So, again, I mean, it's that same theme that's been showing up in all of these quotes. And I think maybe we got a little something to learn from it.
We do, man. We have to follow suit. He only pretty much just set the path. We kind of have to follow through and listen to the guy. He was a doctor for a reason.
And he was taken out by the government for a reason as well.
Yeah.
Well, he was a fan of life, and if we had unity of all the people, then there'd be no more war. So then the racket would be over, and these fools would get hung to dry, and then we'd have a new utopia, a new Eden. And they can't allow that. So that's the eternal struggle, man, and he knew it even back then. Yeah,
and what's sad is that the thing that prevents utopia from being ever... utopia is always a pipe dream, right? And every country, every revolution is basically formed under these utopian ideas. And they're like, oh, well, this country is going to be so awesome because we got this constitution, and it's going to be free, and it's going to be all this stuff. But unfortunately, it seems like a small handful of people always screw up the utopia for everybody else. And there's been all types of ideas and forms of utopias, but it's always like these same psychopaths end up aggregating too much of the power from everybody else. And they're very convincing and they're very charismatic, but they're also sociopaths and they do bad things. And that's been really the downfall of so many different civilizations, so many different societies. So in the coming new societies of the future that we're working on and that we want to participate in, I think we need to keep in mind all these downfalls and not make the same stupid mistakes and really put decentralization first. Decentralization has to go first. And if you look back at during the founding of America, man, there was the Federalist Papers and all that stuff. And there was a debate back then about federalism and all that, but the debate needs to be recharged. Decentralization to me is the key. Self-governance.
Yes.
Catch you guys tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. 5 days a week, same time. Peace.
Adios.
Yo, here we go through the stereo.